The British in the 1960s were on top of their game when it came to nimble sports cars. Aston Martin, Jaguar, MG, Austin Healey, Triumph, and TVR were just a few of the plethora of sports cars built in England at the time. But there was one Chrysler V8-powered brute that was built in England in the late 1960s and into the early 70s that didn't quite know what it was. It wasn't quite a sports car, and yet it wasn't quite a muscle car. This car was the Jensen Interceptor, one of the most underappreciated and misunderstood cars of all time. But considering its giant V8 American power plant and optional all-wheel drive system, this car really does not get the recognition that it deserves. So make sure to stay tuned to the end of this video to learn all there is to know about the incredibly unique Jensen Interceptor and the all-wheel drive version, the Jensen FF. Hi everyone, welcome to Rare Cars. This is the channel where we dive into the past and explore some of the world's most iconic and rare cars. If you want to see more short-form documentaries on cars like the L88 Corvette, the ZL1 Camaro, and others, then make sure to hit that subscribe button because we are dropping new videos every single week. But now, let's get into the very interesting and convoluted history of the Jensen Interceptor. So while the specific Jensen Interceptor that we're talking about in this video was built from 1966 to 1976, there is a quick bit of backstory that we need to cover for all this to make sense. See, Alan and Richard Jensen, the founders of Jensen, were British coach builders in the late 1930s. They carved their own niche into the market by using Ford flathead V8s in their cars, which was a pretty uncommon thing to do in England at the time. They built a handful of cars before World War II, and then production obviously stopped due to the required resources to partake in the war effort. Fast forward to a post-World War II England, and the Jensens were back making cars again. And at this time, they built their brand new car, the Interceptor, in 1949. Now, this was not the Interceptor that you clicked on this video to see, but it was where the name for the Interceptor itself started. The 1949 version of the Jensen Interceptor kind of looked like a sad fish and really wasn't all that notable. Jensen started to pick up some steam again in the car market with their next vehicle in 1955, the Jensen 541. But all these cars that Jensen produced were still more momentum-type, traditional British sports cars. But that all changed in 1962 with the introduction of the Jensen CV8. The CV8 featured a Chrysler 383 cubic inch V8 that over doubled the horsepower output of the previous Jensen 541. The Jensen CV8 also kinda looked like an angry mosquito, which is likely part of the reason that Jensen as a company was apparently in some very dire financial straits in the early 1960s. As a result, the Jensen brothers subsequently retired from the company. Now, when the Jensen brothers left, this one Kjell Kavalle, a Norwegian-American businessman who was a huge car importer at the time, acquired a large stake in Jensen. On the record, I would also like to say that I have no idea how to pronounce this person's name, so if you do know how to pronounce it, please leave a comment down below giving the correct pronunciation. But after his involvement began with Jensen, the new Jensen Interceptor was born. The new 1966 Jensen Interceptor didn't look anything like the CV8 or really any of the prior Jensen cars. The new Interceptor's rather good-looking body was designed by the Italian design firm Touring, and the early cars actually had their bodies built by the Italian coach builder Vignale. And as you could have guessed from the title of this video, the Jensen Interceptor wasn't sporting a quintessentially British inline 4 or inline 6. No, by this point Jensen was going across the pond to America to source the Chrysler 383 cubic inch V8 to start the production run for the Interceptor. This 383 V8 made 325 horsepower in the first model year of the Jensen Interceptor. Performance figures for the 383 powered Jensen Interceptor were kinda iffy to find, but allegedly the vehicle did 0 to 60 in right about 7 seconds and topped out at 133 miles an hour. It also apparently got 13 miles per gallon. The Jensens were available with a 727 3-speed automatic transmission from Chrysler or an optional 4-speed manual. But there were literally so few factory 4-speed Interceptors made that you would actually have a better chance trying to locate a Ferrari 250 GTO than you would a 4-speed Jensen Interceptor. They apparently made just over 20 4-speed cars. Now, most Interceptors were rear-wheel drive, but there was a very special all-wheel drive version that we'll touch on in just a minute. Now, the Jensen Interceptor was not a sports car by any means. For starters, it's hard to be as nimble as an Austin Healey when the Interceptor itself came in weighing around 4,000 pounds. The Interceptor, for all intents and purposes, was a 2+2 Grand Tourer. It packed a luxurious leather-bound interior, solid interior space, and plenty of storage space with its hatchback design. But this was just the tip of the iceberg for the Jensen Interceptor. The best was yet to come. See, the Jensen Interceptor, unlike many American cars, didn't just get a facelift and keep the same name. Each facelifted version or updated version of the car got a different designation, Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, etc. The production of the Mark 1 Interceptors ended in 1969, with the Mark 2 production starting in 1969 going into the 70s. Now, the Mark II cars really didn't have much of a change besides some more interior goodies and a slightly facelifted front end and some work done to the brakes. Overall, they still retained the basic 383 cubic inch Chrysler V8 and not much else changed. Now, the Mark III Jensen Interceptor, which came out in 1971, was where things got interesting. See, this was around the time the fuel crunch started to happen. The newer 383s from 1971 and onward would only produce around 250 horsepower as delivered from Chrysler. Such a steep drop-off in power was not ideal for a car that weighed 4,000 pounds like the Jensen Interceptor did. So the company opted to install the larger 440 cubic inch Chrysler big block V8s into the Interceptors following 1971. There were two 440 cubic inch big block options. The base 305 horsepower 440 cubic inch motor that had a single 4-barrel carburetor, or the 330 horsepower 446 pack car, which featured three 2-barrel carburetors in the quintessential Mopar 6-pack configuration. These special 6-pack cars were referred to as the Jensen SP, and they were only made for the 1971 model year, as following that year, Chrysler scrapped the 446-pack altogether. In 1974, Jensen offered a convertible version of the car as well, but only around 300 were made. There was even a coupe available in 1975 and 1976 that was a sloped-back Interceptor that didn't have a hatch. Why this car was made, I have no idea. Now though, let's talk about the most insane version of the Jensen Interceptor, the Jensen FF. The Jensen FF, short for Ferguson Formula, was actually released very early in the production run of the Interceptor, in 1967 to be exact, and they were available until 1971. What made the FF so special was its all-wheel drive system. Yes, this car was a front-engine, V8-powered Grand Tourer that had all-wheel drive in 1967. The FF itself was about 4 inches longer than the normal Interceptor was and could be easily identified by the double front fender vents on the car as opposed to a regular Interceptor's single front fender vent. The Jensen FFs were actually very technologically advanced cars for the time. The all-wheel drive cars also had Dunlop Maxxaret anti-lock brakes, which were super rare in the 1960s. But the major problem with the Interceptor itself, and specifically the FF, was the cost. See, a regular Interceptor started just a hair over $8,000 in MSRP in 1967, which was a lot of money. And the all-wheel drive system bumped the price of the Jensen FF up to $12,000, which put it in the territory of purchasing almost 3 base model Corvettes at the time for the same price, which is a tough value proposition. Also, for pricing comparison, this vehicle cost about the same amount of money new as a Ferrari 365 GTB4 Daytona, but it was slower and worse in pretty much every performance aspect than the Daytona, and it also wasn't a Ferrari. Tragically though, by 1976, with the gas crisis in full swing, the world economy not doing so hot, and more internal business issues at Jensen, the company went out of business as we know it. Ownership of Jensen bumped around in the late 1970s to a new company who tried to revive the Interceptor with a Series 4 model that never took off. The Series 4 model actually featured a Chrysler 360 cubic inch small block V8. That version of the company itself also went under in the 1990s. In total, there were 7,475 Jensen Interceptors made. This number does not include any modern recreations, this just includes the vehicles made from Series 1 through Series 4. Here's the actual production breakdown. There are 1,024 Mark 1s, 1,128 Mark 2s, 4,255 Mark 3s, 232 Jensen SPs or 6-packs, 456 convertibles, 46 of the coupes, 195 Mark 1 Jensen FFs, 110 Mark II Jensen FFs, 15 Jensen Mark III FFs, and 14 Series 4 cars. The Jensen Interceptor is a rare bird. It's a car that not many people know about. It's a car that really wasn't best in its class at anything, But car enthusiasts like you and I look back on the Jensen Interceptor and can't help but smile, as the Jensen Interceptor was one thing. It was unapologetically what it was, and there is something to be said about that. And that is the short history of the Jensen Interceptor and Jensen FF. If you enjoyed this video, we would greatly appreciate it if you could drop a like and also share this video with other enthusiasts. Also, please make sure you are subscribed to the Rare Cars YouTube channel and smash the notification bell for more documentary-style videos just like this on the world's most interesting cars. Until next time, enthusiasts.